Salute, salute, salute. Bow. So, Roy Jones Jr., man, I watched an interview with him about Terrence Bud Crawford and Errol Spence once again. We coming back to this subject again. And Roy Jones Jr., man, he says that it's a pick 'em fight. It's 50-50. If it's an early fight, Terrence Bud Crawford. If it's a late fight, then Errol Spence. Terrence can, get the cooking real fast. And if he can cook them in the early rounds, he can win. And Errol Spence is a pressure cooker, meaning, it's a slow burn. He put pressure on you. And if it go long, then it goes Errol Spence way because Errol Spence gonna break him down, gonna chop him down. That's legitimate. I salute that. And I always salute that Hall of Fame. Man, I was watching Caps in full. My boy Big Caps, he said, it's a shame that so many people looked at the Hall of Fame ceremony and didn't focus on the actual Hall of Fame. These legends getting themselves cemented into the Hall of Fame of boxing. Guys that we all grew up watching. And it's a shame that it got eclipsed by Errol Spence and Terrence Bud Crawford. Like it turned into, if people try to turn it into like a hate fest or whatever they was calling this shit, like a hate fest on Errol Spence because all the Hall of Fame guys was picking Terrence Bud Crawford instead of Errol Spence. It seemed like people was, now he got his own hang-ups against other communities out there. I'm not gonna go in deep into all of that, but other communities. But I watched it from different angles, and from different angles, a lot of people really wasn't focusing on the actual Hall of Fame, the actual getting the fist cast in stone. Nobody really was talking about or looking at it like Floyd Money Mayweather. I didn't watch the interview yet with Floyd Money Mayweather went up on stage and had his speech. I haven't even watched his speech yet. It looked like he got real emotional. I haven't watched any of these guys, their speech yet because everything that was coming through my feed was all about Errol Spence and Terrence Bud Crawford from all different perspectives. People that are protagonists, antagonists, anti, or for, or, detractors. But Errol Spence fans, or Terrence Bud Crawford fans, from all angles, the most thing that was focused on was the Errol Spence versus Terrence Bud Crawford fight. It wasn't about, Roy Jones Jr. Having his legacy, going through, completely dominating people and going up to the heavyweights. It wasn't about, I haven't seen, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna do my due diligence when I get my own time and watch what James Toney had to say about himself, what Roy Jones had to say about himself, what Floyd Money Mayweather had to say about himself, Layla Ali, and Andre Ward. I seen Andre Ward. It seemed like to me the main thing Andre Ward was talking about was the 3% tax that, these boxing, when you get these belts, why you got to pay all these sanctioning bodies, all this, that's what his focus looked like it was on. So I got to go back and mulch and digest and process everything from the Hall of Fame. I'm gonna do that on my own time. But it did look like to me the whole ceremony was eclipsed by Errol Spence and Terrence Bud Crawford talk. That let you know how big this fight is to boxing. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I don't want to see the Hall of Fame guys turn into the Hall of Shame guys. I don't want to see these guys that was in their prime in my day not know when to, let it go. When I see you like on Will Smith, not against Chris Rock, but Will Smith in Bad Boys 3, where you still dyeing your grays black, trying to be young. When you get old, you gotta pass the torch. And if they pass it to Terrence Bud Crawford, that's cool. Now to me, just from my point of view, I said to one of my subscribers, it looked like all the Hall of Fame guys right now are giving Terrence Bud Crawford his flowers before Errol Spence put him in the dirt. That's how I look at it. But at the same time, to me, Terrence Bud Crawford is closer to the Hall of Fame because his accomplishments and his accolades throughout his entire career, starting from smaller weight divisions. But what he did in the welterweight division, like I watched Fanon live. I haven't watched a Fanon in years. I watched Fanon live, and what he was saying makes sense when he's talking about if you compare Terrence Bud Crawford welterweight resume and what he accomplished as a welterweight, and then you compare it to what Errol Spence accomplished as a welterweight, it really don't make no sense to be trying to tear down Errol Spence and build up Terrence Bud Crawford when it comes to the welterweight division. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can take away and you can break down both their resumes in the welterweight division, but at the end of the day, you have to say that Errol Spence has done a little bit more in the welterweight division, and he's bringing more to the table. And that's not disrespecting Terrence Bud Crawford or what he's done in the past or him being in the Hall of Fame. I have to salute Terrence Bud Crawford going into the Hall of Fame one of these days. If you stay in the game long enough and you put in your work and you pay your dues and you take your losses and your wins and all your accolades and blood, sweat, and tears and years, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame if you that guy. And Terrence Bud Crawford is that guy. But that don't mean as you get older, you don't know how to pass the torch. Like, nobody's stupid to say, man, John Boots Ennis is the future. You know what I'm saying? You got to know when to pass the torch. You got to know when everything else then faded away and the only thing left is your ego. And your ego still thinking it's 20 years old when it's not. You know what I'm saying? And I like the fact that all these guys is picking Terrence Bud Crawford. I really do. It makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, it's a 50-50 fight. I don't look at boxers, especially boxers that was in their prime and then they faded. I don't look at their picks as biblical, because they usually be way off. It's the reason why boxers are boxers, why trainers are trainers, why coaches are coaches, why people like YouTubers are YouTubers, people that do assessments. It's because just because you never boxed don't mean, like, most great boxing coaches weren't great boxers. Most great boxers aren't great boxing commentators. It's exceptions. It's a rare thing. You know what I'm saying? Most people that can watch boxing and tell you who's going to be able to win don't mean they were great boxers or great coaches. They just grew up watching boxing and they can see it from that point of view. So when everybody's giving their pick and giving their point of view and giving what they see, you know what I'm saying, it's all good. At the end of the day, we not going to know what's going to happen until the fight goes down. Period, point blank. It's a pick 'em fight, 50-50. I lean towards Errol Spence. Period, point blank. So I'm going to keep this video nice and tight. I'm not going to stretch it out long. I love all the Hall of Fame guys. Been watching all those guys since I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? And been watching boxing since I was a kid. And as a teenager, you had to go back to Family Video and rent all the old stuff that we didn't get to see when we was too young to see. We had to go back and rent all the Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier's and Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman's, because that stuff was way before our time. Our time was Mike Tyson. Our time was Roy Jones. Our time was Mayweather. Our time right now is Errol Spence and Terrence Bud Crawford. And you know what I'm saying? But we grew up watching Andre Ward's. I can't say grew up. Me and Andre Ward about the same age. Me and Mayweather about the same age. I grew up. Bernard Hopkins was my guy. Period, point blank. And he always picking shit wrong. But I remember watching Bernard Hopkins Friday night fights. He was getting it out the mud for real. For real. And I remember when he beat Trinidad, listen to the commentators, listen to George Foreman, and listen to those guys commentating the fight for the first half of the fight, how they act like, even watching the fight, Bernard Hopkins didn't have no chance of winning that fight. And by the end of the fight, they was all trying to backtrack and double talk and say how they knew Bernard Hopkins was going to outclass Trinidad. So you can have professional boxers like George Foreman, who came back and beat Michael Moore and fought, you know what I'm saying, Holyfield in his prime. He can sit there and watch a fight and call it wrong all the way up to the damn end. So you think I'm going to say a prediction is always 100%? Nah, it's just prediction. It's all fun to watch these guys give their predictions. But the fight gonna speak for itself when it go down. It's a 50-50 fight. You know what I'm saying? And all respect to all those guys in the Hall of Fame. I salute y'all guys, man. Y'all legacies, you know what I'm saying? What y'all did in y'all prime. which y'all still contribute to the game of boxing, to the sport of boxing. You know what I'm saying? Video games, all y'all deserve all y'all accolades. James Toney deserved all his accolades. Roy Jones Roy Jones was getting it when he was supposed to be getting it in his prime. He was one of the most celebrated boxers. But Shane Mosley, he kind of got passed over a little bit. Mayweather got his roses. He got too many roses. Mayweather got too much damn roses. You know what I'm saying? He drowned in roses and flowers. He did. His ego was getting crazy. You ask Mayweather about Terrence Bud Crawford and Errol Spence, he started talking about him fighting Canelo when he was, you know what I'm saying, in his 40s. Mayweather only can talk about Mayweather. You know what I mean? But it's all good because Mayweather, he changed the game. He changed the game, period, point blank. And you see, his father wasn't the greatest fighter. His uncle wasn't the greatest fighter. They was great fighters, but Mayweather Jr. was the greatest fighter out of the family. You see what I'm saying? So it's not like you have to be the greatest fighter to have the, like, you never see the greatest fighter. You didn't see Muhammad Ali raise up the next greatest Muhammad Ali. You see, he had to pass the torch to Larry Holmes, even though he trained with Larry Holmes, but he had to pass the torch to Larry Holmes. You know what I mean? Like, great fighters, you don't see Roy Jones Jr. turning, what's the dude named Conor Benn, into the next greatest fighter. He was a great fighter. He's not the greatest trainer. He's not going to be the best to make predictions, but I respect his predictions. I respect all fighters' predictions, but great fighters usually don't produce the next greatest fighter after them. They have their time, they have their people around them, they live out their life, then they have their legacy, but it's very rare. Like, look at Sugar Shane Mosley, and then look at Sugar Shane Mosley Jr. You know what I'm saying? Look at Mayweather's sons don't box. They don't have to box. You know, look at Chavez Jr. versus Chavez. You know, Freddie Roach wasn't the greatest boxer. He was one of the greatest trainers. It's not like a great boxer is just going to have the greatest predictions or be able to train the next greatest fighters. I respect their opinion and I respect their career. But some of them sometimes they get to a point where they still had a moment of shine when they come to the Hall of Fame and they can remember what it was like to be young and in their prime. They get the big head again, they get the ego, and they start talking crazy. And that's cool. Everybody gonna have that ego when they used to be the man, because they always, no matter what, to the day they die, they always gonna be the champ. You know what I'm saying? Look at what's his name? Let's go champ, let's go champ. He's still going around. Let's go champ, let's go champ. What's his name? I forget his name off the rip. It'll come to me. Shannon the Cannon Briggs. He always gonna be the champ. He didn't beat Klitschko, but he always the champ. Any great fighter that impressed me, they gonna always be a champ, and they always gonna be respected. But that don't mean they always gonna be right. Period, point blank. And that's cool. Anyways, salute to all the Hall of Fame guys, man. Salute all of y'all. Andre Ward. And I'm gonna tell you one last thing before I go, because the whole Errol Spence, Terrence Bud Crawford is just bigger than boxing right now. To a certain extent, it's just big. It's a big fight. Both of these guys need each other. Stop all that Terrence Bud Crawford don't need Errol Spence because he already in the Hall of Fame. Stop all that Errol Spence don't need Terrence Bud Crawford because they both need each other. But it's funny to me because the legacy or the myth of Terrence Bud Crawford came from being a great sparring partner against Timothy Bradley. And the myth of Errol Spence came from being a great sparring partner and blacking the eye or giving a black eye to Floyd Money Mayweather. Y'all can't see the difference in that? Salute.